Back it again with another YouTube video. It's your boy Ariah G, and I got a new reaction video for you guys today. We're gonna react to Jack Swagger almost became a main eventer twice. As you guys see, I'm about to scrap this video that I was going to react to earlier. I'm not going to do it anymore, so I'm going to scrap that one. So let's do this one. Jack Swagger, we're going to react to Jack Swagger almost became a main eventer twice. Let's get right into it. I got to mute it because I don't want to hear that. It's 2 advertisements, bro. Come on. 2 ads, bro. 2. Oh gosh, bro. They gotta get paid though. These YouTubers gotta get paid. Let's see.
Swagger's WWE run was certainly an underwhelming one. His time was supposed to go down much differently in an entirely positive direction. On paper, Swagger had a lot of assets needed to be at the very top of WWE. An All-American and a defensive tackle. Swagger had the makings of a varsity athlete unlike others. He had a 2-way scholarship, he played football and wrestling, and the wrestling was Hager's strong suit. He was very skilled and very gifted. He started wrestling when he was 5 and it was second nature to him. Jack just had that natural ability to him. His credentials include finishing 7th at the NCAA championships and beating the future champion Dustin Fox. And this is something you most likely heard from Matt Striker, but Hager set the record for most pins in a season with 30. This is enough for him to be named an all.
Now, when I do make the title for the video, I don't want you guys to be like, oh, you don't like Jack Swagger. But no, I don't mind Jack Swagger. He was a good WWE superstar. I think he's in what? I think he's in AEW now. So he had a good career. Like, he's won the World Heavyweight Championship. He cashed in on Chris Jericho. So he had a good career. But he was wasted potential because they didn't do anything with him later on in his career. So yeah.
All-American. The man was destined to be a pro wrestler, and Danny Hodge, a former shoot wrestler turned pro wrestler, lived 2 blocks away from Hager and was good friends with his grandson. Jim Ross came into contact with Hager and offered him a deal. He accepted and was sent to Deep South Wrestling. Swagger developed and started to work on his wrestling skills, and he was doing very well and was touted as one of the most bright prospects in Deep South Wrestling.
Oh yeah, and as they was just talking about, he was actually wrestling when he was younger. He was actually doing real wrestling, like the grappling, you know what I mean. WWE is still real in a sense, but y'all know what I mean. Like actual real wrestling, like Kurt Angle.
At the time, this guy was praised a lot and actually respected much more than you can remember. Why? He was a pure wrestler, somebody that easily stood out with his credentials in WWE. I don't think people expected another version of Kurt Angle, but just a great talent that could get down on the mat and play the heel role well. Jake Hager had that bully jock look about him that if WWE perfected and focused on, he would be a star. That was the sentiment at the time, and it's funny mentioning it now because everyone thinks of him differently. He debuted on the September 9, 2008 episode of ECW as the All-American Jack Swagger. He destroyed this jobber and continued this over the next few weeks, and his eagerness to start fights got him in a feud with Tommy Dreamer. It was all about making a name for himself.
Wow, looking back, I ain't even know his debut. I ain't even watch his debut match in ECW.
And that was basically every Tommy Dreamer feud in ECW. He was convinced that he deserved a match for the ECW title so soon. He said that some of them are here to create their legacy instead of bastardizing it. Dreamer cut this dull-ass promo about how Swagger might not beat him. They finally had the singles match. This went the way you expected it with the All-American winning, but showed just exactly what they thought of him. It was pushed hard and so fast. Swagger beat Tommy Dreamer in an Extreme Rules match and set his sights on the ECW Championship. Swagger was considered one of the biggest prospects in WWE at this point. He beat everyone in front of him and demanded the title shot. His wish was granted for the January 13, 2009 episode of ECW. He had a decent match with Matt Hardy, but in the end, Jack Swagger won the ECW Championship. Wow. This guy beat Matt Hardy so hard, he began...
2009? I might have to go back and look at that. I might look at... I got Peacock. I'm gonna actually go watch that. 2009 ECW. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Reconsidering his life. Strangely enough, Jack Swagger's character improved tremendously when he became champion. This is because he had more time to showcase himself and develop that jock character. He had a goofy feud with Finley and Hornswoggle, which is because Hornswoggle stole his title. And during all of this, Christian returned, and the commentators made it seem like he was hiding in a sewer for 20 minutes or something. Matt Striker tried to make it
All the peeps. Christian, where all the peeps.
seem like an instant classic moment, but the fact that he returned during a Jack Swagger segment during ECW in its most forgettable time, and Todd Grisham was on commentary, this moment could be saved. He said that Swagger might electrocute himself trying to talk because of his constant lisp. And I know this is Christian and all, but this highlighted a problem with WWE at the time. The heel champion never looked strong and lost a little too often, although for this storyline, it made sense. This title reign happened and went by like that. He lost it to Christian at Backlash, but the man had some experience by his side. He was ready to move on to Raw, where he was traded. The Red
Now I do remember Christian's title reign as ECW champion.
Brand had a lot more to offer for Swagger, although he was more of a mid-carder here. He debuted in the Raw main event gauntlet match against Randy Orton, and he ended up giving Orton a free win because he wanted to leave a lasting impression. He started a feud the following week with MVP and called him a delinquent and a fraud. If anyone should be called MVP on Raw, it should be him. MVP wanted a fight, but Swagger said he doesn't fight criminals, and this was the start of a feud between the two. Both guys had a different way of things.
Like I said, I feel like Jack Swagger actually had a little decent of a career in his time in the WWE, but they didn't like push him further enough.
Supposed to be something to spend time for both men, it led to them being stuck in the mid-card purgatory. They traded wins and were back and forth until MVP won the feud at SummerSlam. As for Swagger, he was busy wrestling on Superstars. This time period was pretty dry for him. He wasn't doing much and was just a casual mid-carder who mostly lost matches with no push in sight. Raw 2009 was filled with a bunch of guys that weren't doing much, and he was a prime example of that. The Swagger fans knew wasn't around and didn't even have much chances to show his old self a bit. If anything, he was pigeonholed to a certain position and almost never wrestled on pay-per-views. The problem at the time was Swagger was reported to be a failure. This might be nonsense, but at the time, this guy wasn't doing well at all and was struggling a lot. A big opportunity came for Swagger shortly afterwards, though. With WrestleMania coming up in a stacked card, WWE wanted to have yet another Money in the Bank ladder match for the show. This match had a bunch of guys that had a better chance of winning than Swagger.
Okay, I remember this match. This was WrestleMania what? Because I know there was some matches up there. There was like Bret Hitman, Bret Hart versus Vince, Batista versus John Cena, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Which WrestleMania is this? Like, I know the matches that's on the card. I forgot the one. He probably about to say it.
He almost has no business winning this thing because of how many stories they could have told. Christian with the briefcase cashing in on his best friend Edge. Kofi Kingston, who was on the cusp of championship gold, needing to dive over this one last hurdle. Drew McIntyre as the chosen one winning it, and even though Drew McIntyre wasn't ready for it, he had a better story and a better chance of winning the briefcase. This didn't happen.
He just said that if Christian would have won the Money in the Bank that year, he could have cashed in on his brother. Wow.
No, Jack Swagger of all people won the match. This was a very random decision that came from out of nowhere, and there was a couple of guys in this match that had more matches than Swagger had words in the entire year. The craziest part in this entire thing was the fact that Jack Swagger was originally planned to cash in on John Cena. Hager himself claims this, but said that Cena refused to do the job. This is wild and shows that maybe things would have been different in Swagger's career.
Yeah, I heard about that, like, I think a month or two ago, that John Cena said in an interview or something like that, that he didn't want Jack Swagger to cash in on him because he felt like he didn't have the potential to do so. He wasn't just that guy yet.
John Cena would have brought the shovel back-to-back with Swagger in the Nexus. I mean, it's only John Cena. You wouldn't expect anything less. It's just the claims of Jack Swagger cashing in and all that. I just can't really imagine him cashing in on John Cena. And even if he did successfully, he was never going to have a good reign. If anything, John Cena would have highlighted a lot more flaws with Jack Swagger, seeing as Raw is a whole different beast compared to SmackDown and all that kind of stuff. I just can't imagine it would have gone well for Jack Swagger. Other than that, though, he probably would have had a WWE Championship to his name. And I'm pretty sure he'd be ecstatic. He'd be glad that he had that to his name. This meant that Swagger had to cash in on another title. At the time, the world title was very respected, and it wasn't on the level of the WWE Championship due to the way WWE made the Raw title main event often.
Yeah, the WWE Champion was more, up there than just the World Heavyweight Championship, because the World Heavyweight Championship mostly was on SmackDown, and Raw was like the brand at the time. Still is. SmackDown was the only time I felt like SmackDown was really the brand was when Roman Reigns was on SmackDown, with the bloodline and the whole storyline. That's why SmackDown was the big at one point over Raw. But now, who knows? Raw might just be. I've always liked Raw more, but I don't know.
But this title was held by the likes of The Undertaker, Chris Jericho, and CM Punk. The briefcase at the time had yet to see somebody fail to successfully cash in, and so you know what it means. Later that week on SmackDown, Jack Swagger caught Edge and Chris Jericho off guard and decided to cash in his briefcase. The fans were hyped, and this happened every time. They were always excited for a Money in the Bank cash in. He cashed in and dropped Jericho with a gut-wrench powerbomb to become the World Heavyweight Champion, and the moment he won
And it's crazy because I was just watching this episode of SmackDown on Peacock, bro. Like, this episode was on TV, and I saw this cash in.
the title, oh my god. And the moment he won the title, his charisma took a fall instantly. Any type of character he had faded like Kalisto's push. He became so generic and became a character he had no business being. This guy was already gonna struggle being champion, so why turn his character into the most basic and most forgettable? He wasn't doing the push-ups, was missing that Jack vibe about him, and it was already hurting because...
Oh, yeah. Comment down below if you like Jack Swagger's theme song. I like Jack Swagger's theme song. Not really much of a fan of the Zeb Coulter one with Cesaro. I don't really like that Jack Swagger theme.
Edge and Chris Jericho shined brighter that night than Swagger did his entire title reign. This guy is worse with the title than he is without it. As a wrestler, Swagger was good, and even though he wasn't the most interesting character, he always did the work in the ring. Stone Cold himself also praised Jack Swagger, but said that it was too soon. His match with Orton at Extreme Rules wasn't that bad, and even his booking result-wise made him look strong in the first month. But once he feuded with the Big Show, that all changed. Big Show is usually a guy that...
I remember this rivalry. Because I had that match. It was Jack Swagger versus the Big Show. It was Over the Limit. I think it was Over the Limit 2010. And I had it on DVD. And they had a little rivalry or whatever. And Jack Swagger, I guess he was talking about, as far as him being champion, that he was being like cocky with his character, saying he's just better, and he has like all these gold medals because he was wrestling back then, and he feels like he has more skills, and he's been doing what he's been doing as champion. I remember that little rivalry they had, because I remember they fought Over the Limit.
They used to make others look good. But in this situation, he shined brighter than the guy he's supposed to get something out of. And that's very rare because it's not his job to be the guy that's pushed hard. I know his character seemed mid-card, but this title reign would have been better if they made him even more of a jock than...
This was the show. That was the SmackDown. Which they showed the little segment on Over the Limit. They showed that little segment of the SmackDown.
He was previously. This feud also exposed him even more than ever, and the Jack Swagger push was ruined because he wasn't capable of holding it, not to mention his character was so dry. By the time they realized this, it was too late. The best Jack Swagger moment during this title reign was when Big Show destroyed his trophies. It wasn't even his moment. He lost the title to Rey Mysterio, and after this, they made him a budget Kurt Angle. He was using the angle lock a lot and wrestling more like he should with the whole accomplished wrestler thing.
I can agree on that. But then yet again, I feel like as WWE evolves through years of the company, you gotta think about it. First you had Kurt Angle, because he's a submission specialist. Then you got other superstars that are submission specialists. You got Samoa Joe, you got Chad Gable. Like Jason Jordan was doing a little submission, I think, right? It's Chad Gable's like a Kurt Angle too. So it's like wrestlers, they kind of use the same type of gimmicks as old wrestlers from back then, and they just put it into WWE. It's not bad, but yeah, I guess he's right.
Then they had this Kane storyline, which was weird and did nothing to help Swagger after his terrible title reign. He was not in the best position at this point. There was nothing done to help him. They gave up on him, and it's a title reign that should have even happened in the first place. There's a lot of better people for that run. The budget Kurt Angle thing didn't work because he lacked that charisma and fire to him, so he was back to where he was before WrestleMania. A mid-card. Or if anything, he was worse off with the soaring ego. This character change didn't help at all and only starts to cement the fact that Swagger was a mid-carder. He wasn't doing much during this time other than being involved with the IC title scene for a bit. He was Michael Cole's guy for a short time, but that led to nothing, and from out of nowhere, Vicky Guerrero was managing him. This was along with Dolph Ziggler, who shined the brightest in this partnership. Swagger even won the US title at the time, but his reign was nothing and just yet another mid-card champion that did nothing. 2012, despite the fact that he won a title during that year, was his worst year up to this point and showed that if his character didn't change, he's not going to have a future at the top of the card.
He was losing a lot when he was with Dolph Ziggler.
The booking was absolutely bad, and the man was so uninspired throughout the year. I remember more from Santino than I do from Swagger. Big E Langston had a more memorable year, and he debuted in December of 2012. There came a point where Swagger lost 9 matches in a row and took a break in storyline. This allowed for him to recharge and focus on improving himself. Upon his return, Swagger had a bit of a different look and was initially considered someone who was just a mid-carder as always, but there was a huge chance for this character. He was the All-American American, but this time, he was a real American. Swagger was no longer a jock and had more confidence and intensity as opposed to
I remember this.
how the fans last saw him losing those matches all the time. He surprisingly won the Elimination Chamber match to get a title shot at WrestleMania, and already there was a lot of talk surrounding his character. He had Dutch Mantel by his side and was someone who was anti-immigration, shouting "We the people" from the top of his lungs, America, all that. The thing with this character was the fact that he had something that wasn't seen in that era of WWE. It was almost wild for that time period standards. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's wild. It's just WWE didn't involve anything that had to do with real life or politics, so it easily stood out. Jack Swagger and Zeb Coulter's comments involved a lot.
I mean, WWE's gonna do what it does. His gimmick was kind of weird, but hey, it happened.
Of criticism towards immigration, and this caught the eye of a famous conservative commentator, Glenn Beck. He trashed the story and called it stupid wrestling, and WWE had Coulter and Swagger break character and talk about how Alberto Del Rio, the man Swagger was set to feud with, was a friend. They backtrack and try to invite them. He wanted no part. It's just funny how a simple story was going to involve political people and all that stuff, and at the time, WWE also contacted Alex Jones to make an appearance for Swagger at WrestleMania. It's insane, but you know some would have been convinced that Bubba Ray Dudley returned. And with all this attention on the story, Swagger ended up getting arrested for a DUI and weed possession. It was one of the biggest fumbles I've ever seen and ruined his push. This man was gonna walk into WrestleMania, don't tread on me, all that.
I ain't know that happened. He got into some illegal trouble. Oh,
people and win the title most likely, but just like that, they reconsidered things and Jack Swagger was done. He ended up having a dry and basic match with Del Rio, and after that he fell down the card and became a mid-carder again. We the people became a popular catchphrase though and became associated with Swagger as opposed to being an American thing. He had a good partnership with Cesaro called the Real Americans. They had some good matches together and all that. I'm almost shocked they didn't win the tag team titles. But Swagger as a main eventer was over. He did finally turn face for the first time. Fans started to cheer him a bit. And he was even involved in a couple of storylines throughout the years, but he knew that he wasn't going to become a big star in the company, so he asked for his release and ended up fighting in Bellator. He was actually 3-0 in Bellator. He said he had a phone or something like that. I'll never forget that. It was goofy. But other than that, Jack Swagger, he's obviously in AEW now as Jake Hager and stuff like that. The whole point here is that he could have had a bit of a better career. There was obviously a couple of stuff that did hold him back. He wasn't the most charismatic, wasn't the most exciting wrestler out there. And there wasn't many times where you're like, Jack Swagger had a match of the night. There's also another problem in the fact that he didn't progress as well as they hoped. In 2008 and 2009, he was amazing, and I think it's almost unfortunate that he peaked at that time. It felt like things were looking up for Jack Swagger at the time. I remember he was hyped a lot, the commentary used to hype him up all the time, but he didn't reach that potential. And when he had the chance to become world champion and all that, not only did they take away his character, he couldn't deliver on that part. Then in 2013, his biggest chance with We the People, which was a big storyline at the time, is actually supposed to be one of the bigger stories for WrestleMania 29, ended up falling flat on his face after the whole DUI incident, which was unfortunate, and he didn't get that push again, so yeah. Swagger was a decent wrestler, but his character wasn't that exciting, and when he did get...
He messed it all up for himself.
The character, you know, We the People and all that, other stuff came up, the whole DUI thing, and he was done. Alright, what'd you guys think of Jack Swagger? Please comment down below. And that's...
Well, that was... Jack Swagger almost became a main eventer twice. Jack Swagger... He won the World Heavyweight Championship. He won the United States Championship. If he won those 2 titles, I mean, he won the World Heavyweight Championship. That was the biggest champion at one point. The World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship. At one point, those were the only titles that were the biggest titles. He's won the World Heavyweight Championship. But I could see where he means by they didn't do really much with him, for real, and do push him further. And then I didn't even know about him ruining his chances of winning the belt, or his character, his gimmick, and his storyline. They were gonna push him. They were gonna push him originally, I guess, in 2013 again or whatever. But he got in trouble, so they just took it away from him. Said no. So, like I said, that was Jack Swagger. Almost became a main eventer twice. Y'all tell me what y'all want me to react to next in the comments down below. More videos coming. Subscribe, like, comment. And yeah, Uriah out.